Our next guest for the last 13 years has been broadcasting in the booth for the University of Alaska at Anchorage, and he is the voice of the Seawolves Hockey Program. The first 11 years, you were the color analyst, and 13 years, David. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. Does that 13 years, has that just flown by? And how did you get into Seawolves broadcasting, or was that kind of the plan all along for you?
Well, first, thanks for having me. The time has flown by. It doesn't feel like it's been 13 years until I kind of think back at some of the things I've seen and some of the players that have come through that I've had a chance to watch play live. And then it starts to dawn on you that, holy cow, you've been doing this for a long time. And I kind of fell into the position initially when UAA's journalism program started broadcasting the hockey games. They were looking to put somebody up in the booth to get experience up there. The person that they had chosen for it had some type of problem come up. So all of a sudden they were scrambling for another person. And I raised my hand, and, here we are 13 years later. It was honestly that simple.
Well, that's awesome. That gives hope for others of us out there. But I guess you have to be in the right place at the right time and also be willing to take that leap of faith. What was going on in your life? And, were you confident about that raising of the hand to go after this position?
I was confident because I felt like I knew the game well enough that I could go in there and maybe right off the bat not say a whole lot, just kind of learn and see how the process works. But I think as time went along, I began to get more comfortable in that position and began to talk a lot more. I know initially the first, might have even been the first season, I really didn't say much of anything. But just started to get more comfortable in the role. And, when I first stepped into the role, I was married, 2 kids. And it was difficult because of everything else that goes on, being married with kids, working full time. I was going to school full time as well. So it was one more thing that took time away. But I didn't really necessarily think of it as a leap of faith when I raised my hand. It was just something that I felt like I wanted to do, and it just worked out. And, in broadcasting and just like in any other position, a lot of it is, like you said, being at the right place at the right time, and also developing contacts and knowing people. And, at that point, I was new in the journalism program at UAA. I think it was 2004 when I started, 03-04 season. And so I was relatively new in the program still. So I didn't know a whole lot in regard to the professors there. And what that did do is it got me known really quick.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Talk about, 2 years now, you've been the voice. You started as the color analyst, started off kind of slow, as you said, did that for 11 years. Kurt Heider moved on to the Alaska Aces, the amazing Kurt Heider. Just talk about, first, your relationship with Kurt, and then also, what that meant to then replace somebody you've worked side by side with for so long.
Well, Kurt's a great friend. I consider him a great friend of mine. I wouldn't be where I am if not for him. His mentorship and really him allowing me to keep coming back year after year. That's kind of one of the big things right there is, he could have nixed it after a year and said, forget this. But apparently I grew on him as the season went along. So no, he's been great and really supportive, and probably one of the main reasons I'm in this job. I can't lie, because when he called and told me he was going to the Aces prior to the start of last season, the first question he gave to me was, what interest do I have in being the play-by-play guy? And my response was absolutely, I want to be. So he bent the ear of the UAA AD and assistant AD who were ultimately going to make that final decision. I know they talked to a couple other people, but fortunately, I think between the recommendation I got from Kurt and the fact that I've been with the program for so long, they passed it on to me, and so far so good. The rest has been history, and just really gracious to them as well, because they could have definitely gone in a different direction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. But I think it says something when you've been with a program for 11 years, standing by, and then also when somebody like Kurt Heider gives a recommendation. I think people definitely listen to that. Now, I wanted to ask you, hockey is so fast paced, and I know lately you haven't really had your sidekick, your color analyst. You've
Right.
been going by yourself. How do you get through all that? How do you follow all the action? How do you speak without breathing or drinking water? How do you do it?
Sometimes it's hard. Fortunately, those media timeouts come at a good time usually, and those give me a few seconds of rest. But it's hard a lot of times because you're trying to keep up with the play, you're trying to keep up with who's on the ice, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. Obviously, with our players, I know for the most part the way they skate, what number they are, and I can pick that out pretty quickly. It's the visiting team that you kind of get a crash course in right off the bat over the weekend to try and figure out their names and who's on the ice. And one of the problems that I've noticed I run into a lot is trying to say too much in too small of a span of time. And therefore, when I go back and listen, and I know my mind knows what it's trying to say, my mouth is not necessarily working on that same speed. So a lot of times it'll come out as just garbled. It's and there's it's not like I can go back and edit, but that's one of the hazards, if you will, that I run into. And I'll tell the guys later on after the game, hey, sorry about that. That might have been my worst goal call yet. So, and they kind of laugh about it, and I laugh about it, and I just try to get better.
I'm all worried about the announcers being out of breath, but I mean, really, it's the guys on the ice that are really huffing it. I want you to talk a little bit about the grind that is the collegiate hockey season, especially for a lot of these guys who are they're international players.
Yeah. In fact, we've got a few kids from Europe. We know we've got 2 Swedes, 1 Finn, 1 German on the team, and then the rest of the guys come from across Canada. We've got just about every province covered: Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC. So we've gotten just about all the Canadian provinces covered. So yeah, we've got quite a spread of guys from all over. And they do their best to keep up with families, just like you and I are doing now with Skype video chat. Obviously, the kids from Europe have a more difficult time because of the extreme time change. From Anchorage to Germany, I believe it's 10 hours, and so that's tough on those guys, and I know it, but they do a really good job trying to keep up. I've noticed the biggest problem a lot of the kids, especially the European kids, have coming in is adapting to the language differences, trying to go to class, keep up with an instructor who's speaking English, which is at best their second language. And normally they're not well versed in it. So that's usually the biggest stumbling point that they have right off the bat. What I've noticed with a lot of the kids coming from Canadian junior or even, the American junior leagues, if you haven't been in school for a little while and you've only been playing hockey, then you've got to redevelop all your study skills, your time management skills. And that's where a lot of the problems come in regard to that. And that's where you start to see the academic issues start to raise their head with the team is, guys will become ineligible. And a lot of it has to do with, like I said, for the European kids, it's the language barrier. For the Canadian kids, it really seems like it's trying to redevelop habits of going to school, those study habits and those time management skills that they've kind of let go because not having had to use them for the last year or two. And so that's really the biggest adjustment that I've seen.
He picks it up, takes a hit by Zayner, pass sends back out in front. What a save by Mantha! Wow! What a save! Finding the puck on his stick was Lutz all by himself. Mantha robbed him with a glove. Wow. Another look at that one. Boy, Lutz had nobody around him.
For those who don't get to watch your goaltender, Olivier Mantha, I mean, talk about where the Seawolves might be without him, because it seems like he is always making a big play or a save or two to keep the Seawolves in the game. Just talk about that.
Yeah, been watching Olivier for 3 years now, and he's been like that. His freshman year, he was outstanding, put up great numbers, voted team MVP. Last year as a sophomore, put up a great first half. Second half, really it seemed like he was getting tired, and he kind of wore down and didn't have a great second half, but still voted team MVP. And then this season, he's been phenomenal. And unfortunately, if you look at his record and you look at his numbers, that really doesn't show how well he has played. Because I think right now he's sitting on 5 wins. I think it's 5-14-2, I believe is Manny's record right now. He deserves a much better fate than what he's gotten a lot of times. And, it's just enjoyable watching him play because he's so calm back there. He's so collected, and he's such a competitor. He hates to get scored on. Even in practice, he hates to get scored on. A lot of goalies don't care in practice. It's not saying that they're not going to go out there and work,
Sure.
But if a puck goes in the net, it's whatever. It doesn't count for anything. Well, Manny doesn't like to get scored on in practice either. He's such a great competitor. It's really, really fun watching him out there. And the thing that he does is he gives the team a chance to win every single night. And that's where I say he deserves a much better fate than what he's gotten so far this year, because he's put out some stellar performances. And you come up on the tail end of a 1-0 loss. Yeah. We've had a couple of games like that where we run into a hot goaltender on the other side as well. And, we went through a really tough stretch at the beginning of the season where Manny was playing well, but not many other of the guys were. And for whatever reason, things just weren't clicking. We weren't scoring. We weren't winning. Yeah. And now that we've gotten points 5 out of our last 8 games, and really it starts with goaltending and then moves forward. So I know the guys have a ton of confidence in him. Coaching staff's got a ton of confidence in him. I've got a ton of confidence in him. And knowing going in that he's going to give you a chance to win every night, it's a great feeling. Puck went into the corner. 2 Ferris players went down. 2 Seawolf players went down. Lutz kind of leaked out from underneath the goal line, just kind of leaked out in front. And the guy hit him with a great pass right on the tape. And like you said, it was a one-timer. He did not waste any time getting the shot off. And Manny was able to get a push across with the right skate, get into position, and ended up making a great glove save. And that was a game saver, and ended up getting UAA a point out of that game on Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic save. And now, couple of big road trips back-to-back coming up for the Seawolves next 2 weekends here. It's going to be a dogfight. Seawolves looking to get into that 8th spot for the playoff. Just talk about what's going on. And these are going to be a tough road trips. Are they going to be able to thrive or just kind of survive?
Well, they are tough road trips. The place we're at right now, we're in Houghton, Michigan. We play Michigan Tech tonight and tomorrow night. And, it's a position where the way we're playing right now, we've really got the ability to strive, because we've already played Tech once this season. We played them twice back at the Sullivan Arena, 3-2 lost, and then a 1-1 tie, which we did win in the shootouts. Those were actually our first 2 league points of the season. And then last season playing up here in this building, which is a really tough building to play in for a visiting team because the atmosphere, it's such a great atmosphere. The fans pack the building. It's a really cool place to play. And it was my first time being up here last year, and I was kind of taken back because it was just such a great environment. The building's packed. They have a student band. And our guys came out and they won both games up here last year, both nights 3-2. They scored a late goal in both games. And, the way we're playing right now, we could definitely do something similar this weekend. Of course, you've got to have all your guns firing. You've got to get solid goaltending, good defense, and you've got to score some goals. And scoring goals against Michigan Tech is hard, but, it's doable. So if we can come out of the weekend with a split, then that's kind of the big thing. In fact, I was talking to Coach last night, and if we can pick up points every weekend, and obviously that's not an easy thing to do with some of the places we have to play. Playing here is difficult. Next weekend, playing at Northern Michigan. Northern Michigan's struggling this year, but it's still a tough road trip because it's a long road trip, and the guys will have been away from home for 2 weeks. So after that, Northern Michigan is the one team right now trailing us in the standings as well. We split with them back in Anchorage in December. So that was another situation where we should have won the Saturday night game, but we run into a hot goaltender. And when that happens, all you can really do is tip your cap to them. And, sweeping Northern would be huge. In fact, that's one of those things where we look at we have to sweep Northern. If you're playing the teams beneath you in the standings, you really want to come away with those 6 points. So after this road trip, those 2 series, we'll come home, we have a week off, and then we're on home ice to play Minnesota State Mankato, who's they're a really good team. They have been for quite a few years. They're probably not as strong this year as they've been for the last 2 or 3, but it's still going to be a tough weekend. Another team, a lot of kids that can score goals, really good goaltending. So again, that's going to be one of those, you want to sweep your home series, but you've also got to take into account that, you're playing a really good team. So if you come out of there with a split, you've got to look at that weekend as successful. After Mankato, our last 2 road trips of the season, another 2-week trip up here to Michigan, Lake Superior State, who is the team directly in front of us in the standings, and then Ferris State, who's a team we just played. That clip you were talking about was against Ferris State. So again, those are 2 weekends where tough buildings to play in, teams that are playing okay. Lake State has actually been struggling lately, so we desperately need to get a sweep or a split out of that one. And Ferris is a really tough building to play in. Most of our guys haven't played there yet because we did play there last year. Obviously, we haven't played there yet this year. So the only guys that have played in that building on our team are the guys that are now seniors and juniors. And the last time they played in that building, they got swept, and in the first night, they lost 10-2. So that was, that was a couple of years ago, but that's a series where, we've got to come away with a split. Then we come home for Fairbanks to end the season, the regular season, and we've got to sweep that series. So, that's a real easy look into the future. And if things go our way and we get some help, obviously, from the teams above us, I think we'll end up playing into March.
David Tuttle, thank you so much for taking some time out on the road trip in Michigan this weekend. Good luck to the Seawolves and good luck to you.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you having me, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Love to have you back, and hopefully we'll talk about the Seawolves being in the playoffs.
That'd be great. That'd be a great interview.
Yeah.